All members and officers to this meeting of the Democratic Services Committee, which, due to government advice to practice social distancing, will be held virtually. The meeting is being recorded and will be available via the Council's website to be viewed as soon as is possible following the meeting's conclusion. Everyone participating will be accessing this meeting from remote locations. Please could everybody ensure that mobile phones are switched off or to silent mode. Members will have received an electronic copy of the agenda. I will ask officers to present a summary of the key points. For the record, the agenda can be viewed on the Council's website. Members and officers will be speaking at various points during the meeting, and those speaking may switch their cameras on at that point, but I would ask that, with the exception of myself as chairperson, at all other times you keep your cameras and microphones switched off, as this will help to minimise any background noise and interference and to ensure the connection remains as stable as possible. If any members and officers wish to raise a point or question, they should press the hands up icon on the screen hand at the top right hand side of the Microsoft Teams window, and I will come to you in the order I receive requests. Please do not use your microphone until I invite you to do so. Please also lower your hand once you have finished speaking. The chat button has been disabled as we cannot clear conversation in the recording of the meeting when we upload it to the Council's website. Officers from Democratic Services will be supporting the meeting and will be monitoring the use of microphones throughout the meeting, and where necessary will mute those not being used. Before we formally commence, I will now ask the officer from Democratic Services to announce the names of the councillors in attendance at this meeting. I will also ask the officers and any other speakers to introduce themselves as and when I invite them to speak during the course of the meeting. They too should ensure microphones and cameras are switched off when not in use. Okay, Mark, can you?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. For the benefit of the recording, my name is Mark Galvin. I'm Senior Democratic Services Officer Committees. I'm accompanied today by Mike Pittman, Democratic Services Officer, and we've got Lucy Beard here, who's an agency worker in the section at present. Members today, Chair, are Councillor Alex Williams, Councillor Elaine Venables, Chairperson, Councillor Gareth Howells, Councillor Gary Thomas, Councillor Malcolm James, and that is it, Chair.
Okay. Okay, so hold on. So item number 1 on the agenda is apologies for absence. I think there's been apologies from Councillor Voisey and Councillor Smith.
That's correct, Chair. We received no other apologies today.
Okay, that's great. Item number 2, declarations of interest. Does anyone have anything they would like to raise? If you could stick your hand icon up. Okay, it doesn't look like anyone's responding. Okay, moving on to item 3, approval of minutes. Approval of the minutes from the 4th of November 2020.
Move. Second, Chair.
Great, thank you. Right, then item number 4 is member referrals, and I think Laura is going to present this.
Thank you, Chair. Morning, members. For the purposes of the recording, my name is Laura Griffiths and I'm the Group Manager of Legal and Democratic Services. So the first item on the agenda today is the report titled Member Referrals, and this is very much just a noting report for the committee. The purpose is just to update the committee on the performance of member referrals. As all members will know, a referral is a complaint, a request query which a councillor has received from their constituent, which the Democratic Services team then forward to the relevant department or external organisation for attention. This process is carried out so that each part of the referral process is logged and to ensure that a response is received by an agreed deadline. If I take members to paragraph 4.2 of the report, you will see that the following table shows the number of referrals that were made per month between the 1st of March 2020 and the 28th of February 2021. So we've got a total of 4,017. The committee is asked to note that there has been a significant increase in the number of referrals made than in the corresponding period for the previous year. Previous year we had 2,789 referrals. Members will be reminded at the meeting of Council on the 20th of January of this year, the Chief Executive provided members with an update about how Council services are dealing with the pressures of the ongoing pandemic. And he also advised members that there has been over 1,000 more member referrals to deal with during the pandemic. Attached at Appendix 1 for members' attention just shows the number of referrals made between the 1st of March 2020 and the 28th of February 2021 per directorate. The table also shows the total and percentage of referrals completed within 10 and 20 days, 20-day timescales. So unless members have any queries, I would take you to the recommendation, which is just to note that report, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Laura. So can someone move the recommendation?
Can I come in, Chair, please?
Who said that? Gary.
Gary.
Yeah, can you just hold on a minute, Gary, because Alex wants to speak as well. Councillor Williams, would you like to come in?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I'm happy to move the recommendation, but I'd like to make a few remarks about the member referrals process, which I'm sure everyone will sympathise with, and that is we appreciate the fact that the number of referrals have gone up, but I'm not entirely sure whether the resources in the Democratic Services Department has gone up to a similar extent. And the other point that I'd like to make is that we are on the front line in making member referrals and have to report back to our constituents in a timely manner. And it's become increasingly frustrating for me as a councillor, and I'm sure you will echo my thoughts, in having to chase certain departments 3 or 4 or 5 times for even an acknowledgement of receipt of a member referral. Now, I'm not criticising Louise and the Democratic Services team for that, because ultimately they just try and facilitate a response on our behalf. But in a number of departments, I don't know whether it's because they've been redeployed to other areas to tackle the COVID-19 pandemic, that may be the case. But I don't think members have had an adequate response from a number of departments, and I'll identify 2 in particular, and that is in the Communities Directorate, in Rights of Way and in Parks. I know they don't necessarily acknowledge receipt of the referral, and they don't come back to you in a timely manner. Some of my referrals, for example, and I'm sure that this is the same across the whole of the county borough, have taken months, 4 months, 5 months, 6 months to even have an acknowledgement of receipt. So I've gone back to them and said, please, can you just manage expectations, councillors, so that we can go back to our constituents and say, look, the council is under severe pressure here in dealing with your case. We will get back to you within X timescale. Not having us go back to Democratic Services repeatedly, which not only wastes our time, but wastes Democratic Services time as well in chasing across the council. So while I sympathise with the report and the number of referrals which have increased on previous years, and also would suggest that additional resources are provided to the Democratic Services team to deal with these kinds of referrals, it should be noted that it's been an unacceptable process over the last year in reporting back to County Borough Councillors. Thanks.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Williams. Councillor Thomas, do you have a comment?
The problem was, I was told stop phoning the officers, better. So anyways, I put 11 referrals in, better, and none of the bug has been done. I phoned up Western Power the other day about a branch hanging on the lines, and they'd done it the same damn day. If I had put a referral in, I'd been still down waiting for it. You know what I mean? I put in about bins, when was this, in January? It still hasn't been done. So I'm going to start phoning the officers now. I'm not putting no more referrals in. It's not getting damn done. No, they seem to neglect us, the referrals. And it was always been the damn same. You know? And people phone you up and say, what's happening? What is happening? And you will sit here and you're putting a referral and it's not getting done. So in my view, it's easier to phone the officer. Right? And you can get it done far quicker. And I'll have no complaints. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Thomas. Councillor James?
Yeah. Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I've raised these issues with referrals, but at the same time, all right, I must come to the defence of some of the departments down there. And Alex brought up the problems right away. Yes, right away. I've had their staff cut over the years, all right? Now, all of a sudden, during this pandemic, all right, people are out walking. Every day we get loads of people out walking, right? And seeing that rights of ways haven't been done, or there's loads of litter around, all right? All of a sudden, this has been there for years. We've been doing our bit with rights of way. But all of a sudden, now everybody goes out walking and finding, you know, this footpath blocked, yeah. If you haven't walked it over the years, you know, what do you expect us to do about it? Okay? And on democratic services, and I think they do a wonderful job. I really, really do. I agree with Alex with some of them, but at the same time, I have not got a problem with democratic services. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor James. Councillor Williams, did you want to come back?
Yeah, just to come back, I think we're in agreement, Malcolm, to be honest with you. Democratic services do a fantastic job, you know, in speaking to the officers. I think they're under extreme pressure. They need additional resources, and I think that should be a recommendation coming from this committee. But also, and I would agree with you, that rights of way, you know, are under extreme pressure as well, that because of the resources which they have. As you rightly say, Malcolm, people have been out and about noticing problems. What I'm saying, and I think what this committee can report back on, is the process issues. It's not the fact that they're under pressure. We acknowledge that. We acknowledge that they've been out and about, that people have been out and about, and we've been receiving referrals because of that, an increase in referrals because of that. What we need to do as this committee, I think, is put a process in place whereby we as councillors get not only timely responses, but we get an acknowledgement of receipts and an sort of to manage expectations. Because if I'm going back to Andrew Mason, for example, in Rights of Way and saying, oh, I haven't had a response to this, my constituent is pressurising me, and he doesn't come back to me, then that's an issue, isn't it? Because I'll have to escalate it then to his line manager, or my constituent is coming back to me and saying, well, what's the issue here, Councillor Williams? You know, we're on the front line, that's what I'm saying. So we need an acknowledgement of receipts. We need to manage expectations, and to say, Councillor Williams, thank you very much for your referral. I'll get back to you within the next 21 days with an update. And then if that 21 days has passed and he doesn't have a substantive response for me, then he can say, I'm sorry, Councillor Williams, I still need a little bit more time here. So he manages expectations. I can go back to my constituent to say, it's still being dealt with. Please bear with us. Please have patience. So that's what I'm saying. The process needs to evolve so that we can respond to our constituents in a timely manner in some way, rather than just as feel being ignored in some respects.
Right. Thank you, Councillor Williams. Councillor Howells, would you like to come in?
Yes, please, Chair. I concur with a lot of the points we made. I think the only other thing is as well, we do tend to get a lot of constituents who have unrealistic expectations. I don't know how many times I've had people come and raise issues with me which are really outside of our control. And then when we're unable to respond, then they criticise us and say that we're not doing nothing, or if it was you affected, you'd be doing something about it. And I think that's one of the challenges. I do think that there is an issue in relation to, as Councillor Williams said, we are the public face of the council when there are issues. The people in our areas come to us, and the difficulty is if we don't get a response, then we are the people who are criticised. People will accuse us of saying, well, I bet you haven't even done anything about it. I bet you just sat on it. So I think I agree with the idea that we need to have timely responses. I accept that, I don't know what other colleagues are, But in my area, I just a nip out now because there's somebody ringing me about rubbish and that, and it does seem to be a greater incidence of people dumping rubbish and things around in our communities. And the problem is that our people in Clean Up the County are clearly having a challenge to keep up with all these referrals and things like that. But I do think that if we explain to people that sometimes we're unable to do things, or there's a delay because of resourcing issues, I think that sort of thing, people will be accepting it, but they do complain. They say, why am I paying my council tax? And there needs to be an understanding of that. So, I think that making sure that there are criteria in relation to timescales for responding and getting some sort of structure in place going forward, I think that is the right thing for us, and I support that approach. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to ask a question, actually. I don't know if Laura will know the answer, but on the table that talks about the referrals from March to February, says that, the percentage of those that have been completed from March and April in 2020, I assume they're still not completed today, and I'm just wondering why. I understand that the pandemic started at that time. I don't understand why those referrals wouldn't have been completed by now, if that makes sense.
Sorry, Chair, which table are you looking at? That you can.
Sorry, in 4.2.
Yes.
So March is 65% and April is 35%. Now, I understand that when the pandemic hit, it all kind of went bizarre, didn't it, sort of thing. But I don't understand why those referrals haven't been completed now, a year later.
No, and I'm afraid I don't know that, Chair, but I can certainly find that out and feed that back to the committee, because you're right, we have got some that remain outstanding, and that shouldn't be the case after a year by any means. No. So I'm certainly.
So have they been completed? But I know the I've forgotten what it's called, the what's it called, the OTRS system.
Yes.
I think sometimes they're not closed when they have been completed, because obviously if they're not completed, then as councillors we would be continuing to nag, so to speak, to respond. But maybe there's a number that have been completed, or the issue is no longer a problem or something. I just wonder if there's a way to go through and check. It's just such a low number, and I appreciate, again, like in December, January, February, the completion is sort of quite low, because obviously that was when we hit the second wave. But I would imagine that those are going to be completed in the next few weeks, sort of thing.
Yes, Chair, you could be right. It could be simply a case that tickets haven't been closed down, but then obviously there would be concern with that, because then that affects the data, because that skewers the data. But I'll certainly find that out, and I will report that back to all committee members for information, Chair.
Okay, that's great, thank you. Right, nobody else has any comments. Did you want to make some sort of recommendation that perhaps we, what Councillor Williams and Councillor Howes was suggesting, that we make some sort of recommendation that on managing expectations and the response, not so much the completion rate, but more just the response to councillors?
Yeah.
Councillor James?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, I think what we Chair, and I totally agree with the other two councillors, we need an acknowledgement, all right? Or at times, we got 21 days, they've given us a notice of something, acknowledged our complaint, all right? So we can get back to our constituents and say, we've got something, to tell you or whatever, all right? But we do need that acknowledgement. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Williams, did you want to come back in?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I fully agree with that. I don't know how we go about doing it, though. I suppose the whole process of member referrals would have to be changed to a certain extent, in that Louise and the team in member referrals would have to, I suppose, encourage all officers to provide a timescale or an acknowledgement of receipt. So it's something which needs to be, I suppose, broached with Democratic Services, and I suppose, what is it? Is it Kelly's directorate, I suppose, to be able to, change the process wholesale. And then thereafter, I suppose the acknowledgement of receipt and the timescale which these particular officers provide should therefore lead on to a process whereby Louise and the Democratic Services team can chase those officers based on the timescale. So say, for example, in, I don't know, just off the top of my head, planning, for example, say, oh, I'll get back to you in 21 days. Then therefore, that should mean that in 21 days time, if a response or a further response hasn't been received, even if it's one which says, sorry, Councillor Williams, I still haven't got a response for you, then Louise is empowered to say, well, what's the update on this, please, planning? So the process needs to be given some more thought, and I don't know how, we can put a recommendation forward to say the process needs to be reviewed, I suppose, but then it would be useful to know exactly how that's going to occur going forward.
Okay, thank you. Laura, did you want to come in?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Just to assist members, if I take you to 4.5 of the report, you will see that historically members will remember that there was a member referrals project board that was established to consider the current system and see if it was fit for purpose. And members may be aware that an online councillor portal is currently being built that would have the member referral process built into that system, and that's currently being trialled with members of Democratic Services team. A significant amount of work has gone into that, and it's making sure that it is fit for purpose. So hopefully that will, moving forward, that will address some of the concerns that members have raised today, Chair.
Can I just ask them, what sort of timescale are you looking at with this portal?
In relation to the portal, it's currently being built. Obviously, we had to feed into how we wanted that to work and feed in our requirements. It's currently being built, and I anticipate that Democratic Services team members will be able to pilot that system very soon, and the plan will then be for that to be piloted to further members to test and to get their feedback before then the portal actually goes live.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Howes?
Yes, thanks, Chair. One thing I wanted to say, I think, put it on the record, I'm sure members who concurred with me, that this in no way reflects any criticism on Democratic Services. From my experience, Democratic Services are very helpful, and they forward the referrals that we make in on issues, that it's somewhere further down the line. So I just want to make it recognised and acknowledge that we're not criticising them. I think that's important. That's formally recorded somewhere in the meeting. If staff see any sort of criticism that is not directed at the Democratic Services people who are dealing with it. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Williams?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I'd just like to echo that and just ask who is on the member project board at the moment, and just to reaffirm that it'll be us as the Democratic Services Committee that are going to be trialling the project. Is that correct, Laura, is it?
Well, I was on the member referrals board, and let me think. Councillor James? I think there was somebody else as well.
Yeah, Chair, just to assist members, the member referral board was established some time ago, and things have moved on since then, because at the time the member referral project board was established, it was again looking at how we could change systems and how we could make it more, best fit for purpose and meet our requirements. But since then, we've obviously got to the stage where we're now looking at this councillor portal. At present, as I've said, the system is being piloted by Democratic Services team members first, because as members will appreciate, they're very familiar with how the member referral system works. So they can provide valuable input into how they feel that system should work. At present, we haven't got to the stage where we are piling it at members, but certainly I'll take on Councillor Williams' comment that he would, he feels that Democratic Services should be part of that pilot group, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Councillor James?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. You and I were members of that panel. I think it was many years ago when we met. But and there's been nothing since, is there? We brought a few problems there. But Laura, I know, Chair, I know it's a thing for the future, right? But we are talking about referrals. I think, and Laura will certainly be interested in this, I think obviously next year is going to be the elections. I think every newly elected member should be given a day's training on referrals. Their first meeting should be a referral meeting, because it's quite an important part of your council duties, I think, the first time I was elected, I know other members can bear me out, but you were just left high and dry there for the time being. But I think we're on referrals now, and I think every newly elected member should be given a day's training on referrals. And I think that's a thing for the future. Thank you, Chair.
Laura, do you want to come in?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, just to come back on that point, Councillor James, we'll certainly, once we get to a position where we can roll out the councillor portal, we will be looking at having a member referral protocol, but we will equally be rolling out training for all members in relation to that councillor portal, but specifically, again, member referral training. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Right, if there's no more comments, then we'll finish with this item, and we'll be updated on when this portal is coming more into fruition. Okay.
I second. I think Alex Williams, Chair, moved I second it.
Yeah, I moved the recommendation. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And I second it. Thank you.
Right, so item 5 is the contribution towards costs of care and personal assistance. I presume Laura's going to do this again. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So again, this is just a report for members to note, and it's very much to promote the Independent Remuneration Panel for Wales's determination in relation to the contribution towards costs of care and personal assistance. Members will remember that a report went to Council on the 10th of March, and that outlined the IRPW annual report that was published in February 2021. Members will be reminded that the IRPW made a determination in relation to costs of care and personal assistance, which applies to all members of principal councils and co-opted members. That determination is at 3.1 of the report, and it states as follows: all relevant authorities must provide a payment towards necessary costs for the care of dependent children and adults provided by informal or formal carers, and for personal assistant needs as follows: formal, which is registered with the Care Inspectorate Wales, care costs to be paid as evidenced, and then informal, which is unregistered care costs to be paid up to a maximum rate equivalent to the real UK living wage at the time the costs are incurred. This must be for the additional costs incurred by members to enable them to carry out official business or approved duties. Each authority must ensure that any payments made are appropriately linked to official business or or approved duty, and payments shall only be made on the production of receipts from the care provider. Members will see at the current situation and proposal within the report, the contributions towards CPA, they will enable people who have personal support needs or caring responsibilities to carry out their duties effectively as a member of the authority. The IRPW believes that additional costs of care required to carry out approved duties should certainly not deter any individuals from becoming or remaining a member of the authority or limit their ability to carry out the role. At 4.2 of the report, it's outlined that during recent visits to local authorities, the IRPW found that very few members were utilising that reimbursement of costs of care provisions in their annual reports. The IRPW believe that many are reluctant to claim or they're entitled to support because there are concerns about the adverse publicity that this may attract. The IRPW continues to recognise the issues relating to the publication of this legitimate expense and stipulated in the annual report of this year that the requirement to only publish the total amount reimbursed during the year for the authority as a whole and not against any individual. And then I've outlined in the report that obviously if the authority received any Freedom of Information Act, the position that the IRPW say we should take is that we do not disclose details of any individual claims. The IRPW has urged all Democratic Services Committees across Wales to take steps to encourage and facilitate greater use of this provision so that members are not financially disadvantaged. And at 4.5, the report indicates that Democratic Services team have created a claim form that's been designed and aimed at making the process simpler for members, and that form will be available upon request from Democratic Services team should a member wish to take up that provision. So unless there are any questions, Chair, I take you to the recommendation, which is just to note the report. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Note the report, Chair.
Thank you.
Second,
that, Chair.
I'll second that.
Thank you. Councillor Howells, would you like to come in?
Yes, and I'm happy to support the recommendation. The one question that I would ask is asking us to make sure that this information is freely available. Have we any suggestions how we can ensure that all members are aware of this this provision? I think that's the fundamental thing, so that people know. Is there any way through Democratic Services that this can be disseminated to members now and saying that we are formally requesting? Would that be helpful?
Thank you, Chair. Just to come in there, obviously that was the purpose of bringing this report to the attention of Democratic Services Committee so that we try and promote this provision as much as possible. The report would have gone to council, so all members would have had a copy of that annual report. But again, I think we need to promote this provision that is available. So that's certainly something that Democratic Services can do. We can email all members to make them aware, and that they're now aware that there is a claim form that is available and that they can fill that in accordingly. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Laura. Thanks, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Right, if there are no more questions on that item, we will move on to item 6, which is the Member Development Programme, which I think is Laura again.
Thank you, Chair. So this is the usual Member Development Programme report that members will receive, and that's to provide the committee with an update on the delivery of the Council's Member Training and Development Programme and related activities. And then again, the committee is requested to identify topics for inclusion on the Member Development Programme and briefings. So within the report, members will see at paragraph 4 that there's been a number of member development and training sessions since your last meeting, which was November 2020. I don't intend taking the committee through all those, Chair, unless you would like me to, but just to bring to your attention the future scheduled member training and development sessions, which are outlined at 4.5. We've got further code of conduct training for town and community councillor members. We've got members code of conduct training that is a repeat of the sessions that were provided in January and February. There's a training session in April on the socio-economic duty, which comes into force on the 1st of April. And then members will see at 4.6 that we've got some development control committee training sessions scheduled a minerals update, fire safety regulations, national development framework, planning policy, Wales. The report also outlines, Chair, the e-learning provisions that we've got available. Members will note at 4.72 that completion of those courses remains quite low across the authority. So as part of this report, the committee's views are being sought on the best way to encourage take-up of member e-learning activities. The committee will remember that back in March and April 2020, sessions were arranged and facilitated by the authority's learning and development team to very much support members to make greater use of the available e-learning facilities. So unless there's any questions on the report, Chair, committee is recommended to note the report and then to identify any individual member development topics or briefings and e-learning topics that they would like to be included in the member development programme. And just to come in there, Chair, I did note from the minutes of your last meeting in November that members requested a session on mental health. So I'll certainly make sure that that is something that we take forward. Thank you, Chair.
Move the report.
Second that, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Howes, do you want to come in?
Yes, the only point I want to say that a number of members have said is about the issue about sort of listing these training sessions sometimes prior to council meetings. I know that some time ago we had a training session and then we had a members briefing following one after the other, and I know a number of members found that a bit challenging for keeping focus for all that period. So the only thing I would say is, can we make sure that that sort of approach is avoided in future? I think that's something that a number of members have flagged up that I've been made aware of. Personally, I manage it all right, but I know some members found it challenging. So possibly maybe something we need to consider going forward, that we don't have more than one briefing put in advance of a council meeting. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, thank you. I think it's different, isn't it, being online? It's very taxing going from one online meeting to another, whereas obviously when we were in council it was much easier because you're getting up and about and you're having a cup of tea in between. It's not the same. So yeah, perhaps we just need to be mindful of that at the moment. Thank you. Councillor Williams.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I'd actually endorse that. What both of you have said there. It is particularly taxing when you go from one meeting to another during an online session, isn't it? And yeah, a number of members have said that to me as well. Just on the substance of the report and sort of member development, e-learning, etc. Perhaps it would be wise for a note to go out to all leaders of groups and independents, as I like to call them, to identify some of their learning needs, and they can report back. With regards to e-learning, I just think I can probably just speak from a personal point of view, and this is probably echoed by others, in that it's something which isn't seen as a necessity to do, and it's optional. So, and it's perhaps something which oh no, I won't do that because I haven't got enough time, Whereas I suppose if the session was facilitated or led by a subject expert and we could all engage with it online as an e-learning session, potentially it would encourage more people to take part. So that perhaps that could be investigated. The other thing that I was thinking is that often we don't necessarily know where our own knowledge is deficient. Essentially we are lay members, aren't we? We are councillors and not subject matter experts, whereas the Corporate Management Board and officers know their subjects inside out and backwards. So perhaps they may know what we as councillors may need more knowledge on in the organisation. So can I just flip it on its head and ask perhaps for Democratic Services to go out to the corporate directors and their teams to ask them what do they think the councillors ought to know, and to bring back some priorities for us, because I think that would be useful from my perspective anyway, in informing me of what they think that we are, that where our knowledge needs to be enhanced about the organisation and about their services. And also, I would like to see that the member development programme cover the whole organisation. So, for example, if we do something on social services once, then perhaps we could do education the next time, and then communities, rather than repeating sort of the same subject areas time after time, and so that we have a rounded picture and a rounded member development programme across the whole organisation. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I think that you made some good points there, Councillor Williams. Yeah, I think asking the directors is probably a good idea. Yeah, you wouldn't know. I didn't know we needed training on socio-economic duty until it's been put in the diary. So I think that's a really positive way. Perhaps, yeah, Laura, if we can speak to the directors as well to see what they think. With e-learning, and we've talked about this before, it's because I think I've done a couple of them. It's probably the most difficult thing to log into, and I think I can't remember which one it was now. I think it might have been the safeguarding one, that I completed it, but then never got the I forgot what you call it now, like the completion certificate. So it never registered that I'd completed it. And I think when that happens, you just feel a bit despondent, and it doesn't encourage you to carry on and doing more. And I think what's interesting about the pandemic is that we've had, there's been a lot of, in other areas that I'm involved, there's been webinars and things like that that have been really, really good and really interesting. And I just think our e-learning is a bit, it's not user friendly, is it, for most people? And I think perhaps that's one of the problems. And also, I don't think members are aware that there are these various topics that can be completed. I don't know. I don't know if you have any comments on that, Laura.
Thank you, Chair. If I recall, I think the previous sessions that were arranged back in March and April were very much sort of to enable members to be able to log on, because, like you said, there are some members find difficulties logging on to the e-learning system. So those sessions were arranged on that basis. But I'll certainly take back all the comments that members have made today, and I'll take those back to the learning development team, and also your comments about liaising with group leaders and corporate management board about what areas they think that we should include in the member development programme. Okay,
that's great. Thank you. So moving on to Item 7, this is the Public Service Ombudsman for Wales Revised Code of Conduct. Laura, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So this is again just for committee members to note, no changes to the Code of Conduct. This is the guidance that the Ombudsman provides to accompany the Code of Conduct. So no changes to the actual Code of Conduct, just the revised guide, which is attached at Appendix 1. So as members will know, as an authority, we are required to adopt the code in its model form in its entirety. And we did that some years ago, back in 2008. It's the role of the Ombudsman to consider and, when appropriate, undertake independent investigations of serious complaints that members of local authority in Wales have breached the code. In determining whether to investigate a complaint or whether to continue an investigation of a breach of the code, the Ombudsman use a two-stage test. So that two-stage test is, at the first stage, the Ombudsman will aim to establish whether there is a direct evidence that a breach actually took place. If that level of proof that level of proof required is on the balance of probabilities. If that test is met, you then go on to the second stage of consideration, which is where you consider whether an investigation or referral to a standards committee or the adjudication panel for Wales is required in the public interest. Now, members will see within the actual guidance at I believe it's page 35 of your pack, but page 2 of the actual guide. The Ombudsman have outlined the public interest factors that they would include. So, for example, the seriousness of the breach, whether the member deliberately sought personal gain for themselves or another person at the public expense, whether the circumstances of the breach are such that a member has misused a position of trust or authority and caused harm to a person. So I won't go through them all, Chair, but those are listed. So what the Ombudsman has now done is he's just revised that 2-stage test, provided greater clarity on how he will exercise discretion and secure a degree of consistency. When taking everything into account, he will also consider previous decisions of the adjudication panel for Wales and standards committees, and also relevant legal precedents that are set by the court. So unless there are any questions, Chair, it's simply take you to the recommendation, which is for the committee to note that draft code of guidance, and obviously just to advise the committee that, unfortunately, at the time of the meeting today, that consultation on that draft guidance has now closed. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Move the report, Chair.
Second.
Second.
Thank you. Does anybody have any comments or questions they wanted to ask about that? Right, moving on then to item, oh goodness me. Just whizzing on. Item 8. This is review of the elected member learning and development strategy. Right, Laura, thank you.
Thank you. So again, for members, the purpose of this report is to review the elected member learning and development strategy that is attached as Appendix 1 of your pack, and then to consider the Welsh Local Government Association draft induction and development frameworks. And the WLGA are that is still in draft form, so they would welcome any contributions or feedbacks that members have on that. So firstly, in relation to the elected member strategy, the strategy is coming towards the end of its effective life, and in preparation for the 2022 local government elections and the subsequent induction of newly elected members, a review of this strategy has been undertaken to ensure that it is fit for purpose and updated to reflect a number of factors which have changed since the approval of the original strategy. Members will see that the proposed strategy is divided into 5 phases. So we've got administration, which is to establish the newly elected members within the council, the essentials, which is to provide members with sufficient knowledge to prepare them to undertake their initial role in the support of council business, core functions, so that's to provide members with the knowledge and skills to enable them to undertake their core functions as elected members in their wards and on the committees they are appointed to. And then at 4, identifying the needs of the individual members, so the provision of personal development reviews with either an elected member peer or with assistance from suitably trained officers. This will be dovetailed with a member mentoring for those councillors elected after the local government election. And then very much continuing development to provide members with knowledge and skills relating to leading the community, working with external parties, developing those individual and specialist requirements identified within the PDR process, learning and development identified by the Democratic Services Committee. So the Democratic Services Committee is requested to consider the strategy that is attached to Appendix 1, and just to consider if it meets the following expectations and outcomes, which are set out at paragraph 4.6. So I won't go through them all, Chair, but it's just making sure that members feel that we've covered those off sufficiently within the strategy. And then taking you to the WLGA induction and development frameworks. Those again are draft documents, so comments and feedback are welcomed. Appendix 2, which is the induction framework, that outlines the curriculum for the induction of members in Wales leading up to and following the local elections in 2022. It sets out the suggested local and national activities to support potential and new members. And again, as indicated in the report, it's not designed to be prescriptive, as the needs of each council and members will be different. It should, however, provide a guide for what should be considered when developing local programmes. and the framework has been developed by local authorities in Wales in conjunction with WLGA. And then at Appendix 3 is the development framework, which outlines the knowledge and behaviours that are required by members. The framework includes a range of generic competencies required by all members, and then there are separate sections for specific roles on the council, and that will be useful when providing support and training for members to identify their priorities for continuing personal and professional development. So again, Chair, unless there's any comments, the recommendations are just for the committee to review the strategy and then endorse its submission to Council for approval, and then consider the WLGA frameworks that are attached to Appendix 2 and 3. Thank you, Chair.
Move the report.
Thank you.
Second that, Chair.
Okay. Oh, Councillor House, you'd like to come in?
Yes, thanks, Chair, and thanks, Laura, for that. You know, and I've got no issue. You know, it's a comprehensive report. The one question I wanted to ask is, I think the day of the election when the result is published, for new members, and I can only speak from my experience when I was elected last time, it was quite a learning experience to start off with. And I'm just wondering, would it be possible for the council to produce a little, you know, an A4 little sort of document, a couple of pages, just giving some basic details after the election, after the count, so that the elected councillors, particularly new councillors, will know certain things about what documentation you require, for example, for payment bank details, sort of essential initial contact names and numbers, so that people have got it. Because I think a lot of us found when we came in that it was a lot to learn, you know, straight away. Whereas if we'd had a little pack in those days following the election and before the inaugural meeting, people would have an idea of the process and that. So I'd like to propose that something like that be put forward, if I may, as well.
Sorry, Chair, shall I just come in there? So, Councillor Howells, the team do provide an induction pack for all new members, so that provides all the necessary information that that they will have. But certainly, you know, we will look at that induction pack and make sure that it has everything that we feel new members need to have, you know, from day one.
Okay, no, that's
Can I
fine.
come in, Chair, please?
Okay, thank you. Councillor Thomas?
You do get a pack of it, you know what I mean? And it's in a folder. Everybody gets a pack.
Yeah, but I don't think
sign. You get a photograph, you sign, and then you're given a pack.
Yeah, but I don't think you don't get the pack straight away. That's my point. Is the day after the election, you should be given some basic information, and then obviously when you come down a day or two later, there is something there for you to look at in advance before. You know, that's the problem, because it does tend to be a bit of a whirlwind the first couple of days. That's what one or two people have said to me. So I'm only sort of relaying people's other experience, and I got some sympathy with that as well. It's not a criticism, it's just saying how we can do things a little bit better in future.
What happens when you sign and have a photograph, that's when you get the pack.
I think we need to look into this. I thought you got the pack on the night of the election or the next day.
If you sign that night, yes. But if you don't sign, you don't get a pack until you do sign.
Well, I don't recall being asked to sign anything, quite frankly. You know,
yeah, you must have had your photograph as well, didn't you?
Yeah, but it was, but my
photo
all
at the same time.
Yeah, no, it was a couple of days later I had my photos, you know. That's what I'm saying. You should have something, you know, when you come after you're elected, there should be something, a little brief, couple of just 2 or 3 sides of an A4, but something so that at least you know what to expect. That's all I'm saying, rather than you sort of come in blind.
Yeah, thank you. Laura, did you want to come back in?
Thank you, Chair. It was just to say that obviously in the autumn now we will be looking to have sessions to very much sort of, engage with the public to see if anybody is, interested in standing as a member, and obviously they, will have very little experience of that. So we propose then having sessions, perhaps the Chief Executive, for example, providing a session, and then the monitoring officer providing a session. So we will be looking to do that in the autumn. But as I've said, all newly elected members should have that induction pack, and we carefully work through that induction pack to make sure that it covers off everything that we feel that members should need. But we can certainly take away, the comments from the committee today, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor James?
Thank you, Chair. I totally agree with Councillor Gareth Howells, actually. When I was first elected there, our first elections I used to go to at the count, the newly elected councillors were given the pack on the night. That hasn't happened. So Councillor Howells is quite right, actually. It's a couple of weeks later you're given that pack. And it used to be they were given them on the night. And that's what should happen.
Yeah, you, quite right.
Okay, thank you. Mark, do you want to come in on that?
Yes, thanks, Chair. As I recall, they are given out on the night, and new members or members that come back, their photographs are taken. But of course, it's a long night. The count is in the night as well. It was in the Rec or the Bowls Hall, and some counts for some wards go on longer. So what as I recall we do then is we invite members who haven't signed, had their photo taken, to come to the committee rooms in the subsequent days after the election as soon as possible, and we give out the packs then, take their photos for the website, etc., and that is how it's processed. That's my recollection. So it is. I think it's on the night or within a few days after that.
Okay, thank you. Okay, does anyone else have any other comments on the learning and development strategy? Okay, we moved the recommendation, didn't we? I think so. Okay, if everyone's in favour.
Yeah, we did move them, Chair. Councillor Thomas moved on. I think I seconded it.
Okay, then moving on to item 9 is urgent items. I don't have any urgent items, so I will bring the meeting. Oh, Laura, did you want to say something, Laura? I will bring the meeting to a close at 10:57.